the NCAA. They're letting schools and athletes enter NIL deals. Now, Caleb, I want you to explain how this is different than the situation we have now.
Well, this is a proposal. It hasn't gone into play yet, but this is a very radical reform, which is basically a Division I schools will be it's a proposal to allow them to, for the first time, pay their athletes in ways that are not tied to educational resources. So basically, this is a way to say schools can directly pay the players.
This is what's going to happen. People I've talked to, eventually the school is going to go, the money is going to go through the school. So if you don't like NIL now because it's the wild, wild west, the way that it's going to be legislated, for lack of a better term, is it's going to go through the school eventually. So that's going to happen. I thought it would be more like 5 years, but what you're saying is it could happen sooner than that.
Yeah, this was a groundbreaking thing. And this is the same NCAA that just 2 years ago was fighting tooth and nail to stop the Supreme Court from legalizing NIL to begin with. Here's what makes this a little interesting. For those of you who claim you're looking out for the athlete, and I was for NIL, and I think you were for NIL too, Dave.
Yes.
But guys, I'm just going to say this to you. NIL was not a net positive for everybody. And don't think that you were looking out for all college athletes when you supported NIL coming into play. Because now what's going to happen is, one, there's going to be Title IX lawsuits left and right. Because the money, schools have to allocate equal money to all sports. And that's the only reason it hasn't happened yet. Exactly.
That's what I was told.
And by the way, if you're in a boat race to try to get the best players in football, and to do that, you got to kill your women's sports. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to kill their women's sports. And so you might effectively see women's sports, which, by the way, Tennessee was a groundbreaker in this. Tennessee embraced Title IX in the 70s. There's going to be fights to overturn Title IX right now because it's just not going to work. So you got to figure that out. I don't think they realize that the way the NCAA operates, college is effectively socialism for athletes. They have to allocate the same money to every athlete, no matter their value. That is what Title IX makes clear, and it has to be equal with genders.
And the reason being is because these universities are federally funded.
They're federally funded, they're non-for-profit, and they're educational institutions, quote unquote. And so, yeah, it's. But how are you going to compete if you do that? Because schools like Alabama and Tennessee want to offer way more to their football players to try to get them to come. And this actually will hurt the football players.
Here's my issue. And I think it's eventually going to go through the schools. But my issue right now is, and by the way, Caleb covers politics, so he can provide some insight. I don't think that Congress sees this as a hot button issue, like the steroid issue in baseball. If they saw it as a hot button issue, they'd want the pub and they'd jump on board. Eventually, Congress is going to have to pass a federal mandate on how you use NIL. For those that don't know, Josh Heupel can call Spire or whoever. There's more than one collective group. And he can call and say, I really like this guy. Can you make him a target? And he can do that. Now, technically, I don't think he's supposed to do that, but he can. But because of the difference in the laws, Eli Drinkwitz can sit in the same room, pardon me, and negotiate a deal with a prospective athlete with that advertiser in the room. That's a Missouri law that was passed just about 3 months ago, I think. To me, the playing field needs to be equal across the board. But I don't know that it's ever going to happen because the Congress doesn't see this as a big fish. This is a minnow compared to the steroids and Major League Baseball thing.
Yeah, but okay, here's why Congress needs to act. Now, this wasn't this Congress that passed this. This was passed in 1884. So, but the Sherman Antitrust Act still exists. And the whole reason the NCAA...
But I'm talking about them getting involved and having a federal mandate.
This is what I'm saying. The reason you have the Wild West open right now in college football is because of a law Congress passed 125 years ago. Okay, well, if Congress is the reason you have the Wild West now, doesn't Congress have a responsibility to come back and say, well, we created it? By the way, I'm for the Sherman Antitrust Act. I don't believe in monopolies. I don't like monopolies. I'm for it. I think it's a good law. Okay, fine. But if you're going to do that, don't you then have to come back and say, well, because of this law, the federal law, this has happened. So we probably need another federal law to address what's happened because of this federal law that we created. So, I mean, because again, if there was no Sherman Antitrust Act, the NCAA could just get away with still like making millions while athletes make nothing. And so
but Caleb, has it even been brought up yet?
Well, yes, Tommy Tuberville and Joe Manchin proposed NIL regulation. Some of it was sketchy to me. I got to be honest. Some of it seemed just a way to get money out of the hands of players and back into the hands of coaches and administrators.
Well, see, that's the thing that's going on right now. So if you want to give to the university, you have two people calling you instead of one now. You have your main contact at the university that's calling and saying, hey, we would love to build a new soccer stadium. They have a new one. Would you like it to be the Caleb Calhoun Soccer Center? Okay. And we really need this. And if we don't have a new soccer center, then it's going to be bad for our Lady Vols, and we want to provide the best college opportunity. That's a pretty good sales pitch, right, Caleb? So it's the Caleb Calhoun Soccer Center. You're like, oh, I'm on board. I mean, I get my name on it. I get to give back to ladies that might not have opportunities elsewhere, and I've done well in life, so I want to do that. Then you got somebody else, probably with the Spire Group, calling you and saying, hey, we need $1 million to be able to give to this top prospect, because if you don't give that money to that top prospect, then he's going to go to Alabama or Georgia. That's the issue now that is going on. That's the big rub. So at some point, it has to go through the schools. It absolutely has to.
Yes, but here's the can of worms that this could open up. We all remember the Brett Favre welfare scandal in Mississippi last year. I'm actually going somewhere very serious with this, though. But for those who don't remember, and Brett Favre's out here suing everybody for it, and I don't care. Come sue us, Brett. I would love that. That'd give us more publicity because you're POS Brett Favre. But what happened was Brett Favre worked with the Mississippi governor and there's text that he was involved with a welfare scam where they stole money for welfare recipients, the poorest people in Mississippi, to give it to build a volleyball stadium for Brett Favre's daughter to play at Southern Miss. Dave, now with the schools being able to directly to do that, if this goes into law, you don't think states like Alabama or Tennessee, who have a lot of legislators who went to Tennessee or Alabama that are Tennessee and Alabama fans, you don't think they'll just openly say, we need to divert some funds away from this public project that helps everybody so we could give it to the university to go buy some of these players? And honestly, I don't even think the fans in those states would care if they did that. And you are going to see, don't you think you're going to start seeing states, particularly in SEC states, diverting money away from, I don't know, schools, like the public school system to help kids or whatever school, or just anything that infrastructure, roads? You don't think they're going to pull money from that and put it into the colleges to go, not even for educational purposes, but to go buy athletes?
Interesting. Yes, I think they're going to be buying athletes. I think there also needs to be some transparency of how much money is being spent. I don't know necessarily that Nico got $8 million. I think some of those numbers have been inflated from some people I talked to, but I do think it's important to know how much it is. And if I'm the university, I want to know how much it is.